Outfit today. You ready to listen?
Teaching I've received, I recognise that Russell is a construction. As it says in Course of Miracles, to watch the ego, the self, like me, I'm tapping, things that put you in your body differently. You need to learn something. Says, my question, I would suggest breath work and tapping, things that put you in your body differently. You need to learn some of Michael Singer's stuff, as he outlines in the book Untethered Soul and Living Untethered. We need to learn, as it says in Course of Miracles, to watch the ego, the self. Like me, I'm Russell, yeah? I think of nothing more than what Russell
love you,
wants, what
Russell.
doesn't want. But on some deep level now, thanks to the training and teaching I've received, I recognise
We're
that
doing
Russell is
well.
a construction. I live pretty devoted to the wants of Russell and the fears of Russell and Russell's anger and needs, etc. But on a deep level, thanks to the 12-step program, this breathwork technique that I've been doing, I recognise that I am the awareness that observes Russell. This means in those situations where I feel scared shitless, the same way you feel scared shitless, I have recourse to another place. That don't mean I don't do crazy dumb stuff like getting frustrated in traffic or having arguments with my wife or getting frustrated with my kids. I do all of those things. But I have within me a cathedral. I have within me a quiet
Cathedral
place.
is
I have
nice.
a place that I can go to. From this place I talk to mentors. From this place I meditate. From this place I pray. I've come to realise that the spiritual life is the ultimate life. This is the life that we must pursue.
Right?
This is the life we must pursue.
That's the only one.
We can't expect this external world to heal us. We have to find techniques to awaken us from the tendrils that tie us to this world. Now, I recognise that I ain't poor no more. I live a pretty comfortable life in loads and loads of ways. Loads of ways. But these things, when I feel bad, are useless to me. All things are useless to me unless I deal with this inner space using the techniques that I've described, reading the books I've told you about. For me, it's a full-time job. I hope you can tell that looking at my face. I ain't playing. I'm full-time working on spiritual awakening. A lot
Yeah.
of the time I fail. I'm so far from perfect because it's ridiculous to even begin to inventory the ways that I fail on a daily basis. But I am trying. It is my purpose in this world. And I
Yeah.
believe that we can achieve together.
Good times.
Particularly
Yo,
together in
Russell
ways
is the winning
conceivable
one.
that we might achieve apart. So read those books, join some support groups, stay a member of this community. Tell me, or something even in some way. But sometimes I wear a lot of jingle jangle jewelry.
I really like his outfit today.
Jones video, I taped my mic on. Always the mic is taped on in some way, but sometimes I wear a lot of jingle jangle jewelry, and I'd overdone it on the Alex Jones video. Here's a still of me in that video. You can see I've gone too far. Stallion Dave, hey Stallion Dave, says the lies and conspiracy is interesting. One here, either Phil or Gareth or thing was making too much noise, so I had to tape it down. Alan Frost goes, what is this? Are you doing a commercial? When he says something, tape down your trinkets. It adds down a bit of individual flair to your accessories. Amagilly, why do I... Squeezer says, holy tape. Noisy? No, never. Tape.
Okay. What is adrenal fatigue? I know, I mean, I feel it.
Thank you for tuning into our Ask the Expert blog. In this edition, we will explore the differences between adrenal insufficiency and adrenal fatigue. My name is Fadi Hanishmouni, an endocrinology and genetics researcher and clinician at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, USA, specializing in endocrine genetics and inborn errors of metabolism. Stress is a natural physical and mental reaction to life experiences. When stress lasts for too long and is left untreated, it can cause serious health problems, particularly those affecting the endocrine system. The adrenal glands create hormones to help us control stress, but there has been a long debate and misconceptions about what some adrenal symptoms really mean and whether some adrenal disorders exist. So let's get started with the first question. What if I was told I have adrenal fatigue? Well, adrenal fatigue is not a diagnosis in current medical sciences. It was really coined around 1998 as suboptimal adrenal function resulting from stress and distinguished from true adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease. But we as physicians need to take the complaints of our patients seriously, and we should really not discount their symptoms or signs, as it could really be truly from an underlying medical problem. Therefore, it's important to not discount their symptoms, to listen to their issues, and to try to formulate a differential diagnosis. Second question, what are some harms in treating adrenal fatigue? if it does not exist? Well, patients whom have been labeled,
It's like the usual question for healthcare.
including tiredness, trouble falling asleep or waking up, low mood, aches and pains, and the need for stimulants like caffeine or tea
Or
to get
sex.
through his day. So, treating these symptoms with adrenal or thyroid extracts or unknown formulations such as glucocorticoids or thyroid extracts,
Ooh.
merely because of the possibility of adrenal insufficiency,
Don't take
can
anything in
fact
such
lead to
jars.
many health problems, including mood issues, lack of sleep, and muscle complaints. Physicians may need to steer patients away from taking unregulated supplements or formulations with unknown ingredients that are oftentimes recommended by alternative practitioners.
Alternative?
Next question. What is adrenal insufficiency and how can I tell the difference? Now, one glaring problem of the adrenal fatigue concept is that the reported symptoms don't match those from true adrenal insufficiency, although there's some considerable overlap. For example, the adrenal fatigue symptoms are mostly nonspecific, including being tired or fatigued to the point of having trouble getting out of bed, requiring stimulants such as coffee or tea to get through the day, experiencing poor sleep, feeling anxious, depressed or having low mood, nervous or run down, craving
53. Oh, great. Let's watch that.
So this is a great practice for that, or if you're just feeling quite stressed, this can also be quite good to relax things and find a little bit of energy. We'll do a little bit of compression through the throat and opening up through the throat as well, just to activate the thyroid gland too, which helps. So let's make a start. If you have got some cushions, please have them nearby, because we'll use them in a little while. And then also a block. If you don't have a
I
block,
don't
then
believe
your
in
cushion
any
will be
yoga
fine
that
as well.
has some support
Use those.
mechanisms outside
Okay,
of
so let's make a
human
start in a
body or
comfortable
another
seated
body.
position. And resting the hands just
We don't need
somewhere
no
where they feel comfortable on the
cushions
legs. And let's close down the
or a
eyes.
mat.
Noticing the breath. Noticing how you're feeling. Noticing how you're feeling with the attitude of kindness towards yourself.
It's gonna be a long one, huh? Okay, so these are the moves, just so you know. Nothing intense.
Starting
Basically
to
lying down in a child's
deepen
pose.
into your breathing very gently.
And legs up, legs to the sides. That's it. You know what I want? I want to watch that video. What's happening with adrenal
My
fatigue?
lovers, welcome to my channel and welcome to another high tea reading. And no, it's not weed tea, it's high vibrational tea. So I'm going to get the messages first for you, or rather the messages that are about you first, and then I'm going to get the messages for you that's about your person. Okay, so let me just give this a stir. Then I'm gonna gulp it down, and then we're gonna do some tea leaf readings. Okay, so launched. Came before you, or the first 8 generations that came before you, plus descendants, and descendants, oh my God, of course.
Yeah, we forget to
I knew it.
thank our previous generations somehow as a culture. and it's really easy to ignore them, but they're here, you know, and they're here.
T,
Yeah.
before the reading,
And they're, you know, not
Right,
all of them
so I
are
think,
supporting us. That's the
you need to
thing.
clear
It's like extra work
the
we don't think of or
4
know.
generations that came before you, or you can clear the 8 generations that came before you, plus your descendants. And descendants can mean nieces and nephews or potential descendants. And plus soul family, and soul family will be soulmates, your twin flame, and their family, because they're a soul family. Okay, so well, most of them might be actually. Most of them are.
I don't enjoy it.
So yeah, so that's that service. And then remember I did the pre-birth trauma healing session with those that sign up. You can also have that as a service, either a remote one where you read up if you're interested. So this time I'm going to drink the tea.
Yes, drink the freaking tea.
Pardon my slurping if you do hear it.
She's super relaxing though. Come on, my love.
Messages about you, okay? And whatever we need clarification on, if we need clarification, I'll do it in the extended, but let me get all the messages for you.
Extended.
All right.
Sexy times.
I see
When
Spirit
should I
is
do
trying
my
to get your attention
Extended. on YouTube?
about something. And it's a project or it's an action that you need to take in order to embrace and clear the path. Just now, they're giving me so much images in my head, so I'm trying to put the story together, right? Like, whatever this action is, whatever you need to take notice of, it's meant to clear the path to your abundance, because I'm literally seeing like the pot of gold and the kind of leprechaun guiding it, okay? It's meant to take you to a destined destination.
Yeah.
But I'm really getting it's about abundance. I'm not getting just yet that's about love. Let me just check.
Abundance is love, yo.
By a love spot. Okay, yeah. So whatever's coming up by your love and romance area, it's not peaked. It's not. Yeah, it's not ripe as yet. They're saying it's not ripe as yet. It's still evolving. It's still coming up. It's still in the realm of the spiritual and the unknown. It's not here in the physical yet. So it is not about love and relationships. There's something that's still incubating in that area, right?
It's always incubating
But
in that
there's
area.
something here that's like overdue. Look, the leaf is right on the rim of the cup here. There's something here that is totally overdue. And they're ringing the fucking bell. Hello. I'm getting like maybe it is, okay, let's say you might have applied for a loan. There's something that you forgot to file. Or if you're studying, there's like I don't know if you have a chapter or something to finish, or you've been putting it off, or just like there's some kind of block to it. Like you feel blocked to it. It's just the resistance just before you make that breakthrough. You know that particular meme that people circulate where this guy, he's in this cave and he is digging with an axe, and just before he gets to the water, or just before he gets to the pot of gold, he gives up. Spirit saying like, you're right there. You just have to push through and persevere, but you are right there.
Every reading is about that, basically.
And this thing's like, it's long overdue. It's ripe. It's there for the picking. But like you're not doing the action. So I'm gonna ask what action you're meant to take.
Excuse me. How much action needs to be done? How about stopping?
To take and then this was just a part to what he meant to do.
Where's the juice of this reading?
But there's something here that needs to be brought back into balance.
Oh, really?
I definitely think that there's a total transformation that is afoot. I mean, the kind of work you've been doing on your self-love, your codependencies, it's obvious. It's obvious, right? What else is happening here?
There's a magazine called New York Family, and there are two moms with with two children. So beautiful.
There's a family secret that you are going to find. I don't know where the hell that come from, guys. Okay. There's a family secret that you're gonna find out about within a month's time.
Why would
Yeah,
I know?
it's exactly a month's time. You're gonna find out. It's whatever work that you've been doing has kind of stirred it up at the bottom, and it is making its way to the surface. You know we went on that, right?
Family secret. Your dad never loved you. Your mom had sex with someone else.
I'm going to final.
You're an unwanted child.
Who's
You're an
involved?
accident.
I actually have a chart for that. Who's involved?
You almost died when you were born.
I know we like the tea. What else is here? What else is here for you guys?
Your dad wished you were a boy. Your dad died hating
For a
you.
lot of you, you're gonna feel your divine masculine in your energy. A whole lot. A whole lot. I see them firmly rooted there. And it's not just them alone, guys. There's like former other people that is going to be like the word I'm getting, orbiting.
Orbiting is the
you
way.
like into the bloody sun. Because you're going to be shining. You're going to be shining. I see that here. You're going to be shining. There's something about the mystery of you that is going to be magnetizing
Too many YouTube videos.
suitors. So do not be surprised
Too little
if they just like
in-person
pop
time.
up out of the woodwork. People that are not even on your radar. They're not even on your radar.
No, oh.
But you are definitely on theirs, okay? So expect that. Alright, so let's read the messages about your person that Spirit wants you to know. What's the most significant thing that's happening in their life? They're trying to be a workaholic.
Oh, yeah.
I say trying to be a workaholic. Because they are being blocked. I think for a lot of you, your person, this is how they try to escape from their reality. I mean, there might be other escapist things that they do, but I think one of their go-to is work. But not even that is offering the usual comfort, the usual break from the anxiety that this person suffers, okay? They're being blocked, and they're not seeing any progress where that is concerned. They've been absolutely stymied, but they don't realize it's spirit that's blocking them, because spirit is trying to bring their attention to some sort of deception. But it's not just deception.
So many
by
magazines
others.
I got.
It is also a self-deception that they have. So then we can ask that. How is your person deceiving themselves? Because I'm really getting that strongly. That is, it's not others, it's them. It's definitely them. In their arena of love, and it's so strange, they have a lot of things happening to two sectors. So I almost said sex. Two sectors, and to me, and there's even a bridge that's bridging these two sectors, and this is usually the devil position here, or what we call the codependent position. And there's the love position, and then there's, look, if you look, there's a flicking bridge. There's a bridge that they're meant to cross. So right now, your
Cross that
person, they're faced with a
bridge.
choice. Do they continue in something very codependent and toxic, or do they cross that bridge that's been made by spirit
Cross
into the land of
it.
love? I see there are two ancestors here that's trying to support your person into making the right choices at this point. And what they're pointing your person to do is to do a lot of work on their self-love in order to purge and get clarity on the decisions that
Love
they need to make.
yourself. Classic stuff.
In their sector of codependency, if you look here, look, the leaf is even overflowing the cup because there's something long outstanding, long overdue, that's basically taken over a person's life, some kind of codependent habit that's taken over a person's
Too
life
much
that
sex?
has come to roost, that has come home to roost.
People that you
It is
don't
now
love.
impacting your person's life in such a profound way, and maybe because I said sex, for some of you it might be some sort of sex addiction that they may have
Right.
had, okay, some kind of
Too much
skewed
porn.
relationship that they have with sex that's now coming and taking over their life.
Stop watching
I can
porn.
ask,
Stop. Just stop watching
what's this?
other people
What
have
is this
sex.
codependency? They're being asked to purge this. It's a purge. So they're
It's like
actually
me
purging
stopping to make art.
it. They are purging.
Let's make a deal. You stop watching porn and I stop
Wow.
making art. See what
Okay.
happens.
It's like your person's completely stirred up. It's like, from what I see here, like in nearly every sector of their life, there's some shit going on, and that's why I feel an energy of overwhelm at this time. I feel them going within themselves, not socializing too much, not depending on anything on the outside of themselves.
Too late.
Fan says
So much work.
they are going deep, and a lot of
Paperwork.
stuff is being stirred up for them. Is it in every sector of their life? There's stuff going on. There's stuff going on. I mean, I feel like your person might be going through some sort of like adrenal fatigue. That's the energy I'm getting, because even now, as I tap into this, like, my energy level has just gone down. Absolutely. Adrenal fatigue is just just too much shit going on, and you can only run on adrenaline and cortisol for so long. For so long, you know? All right. So in the extended way, I'm going to ask those questions, but let me find out what advice
Final
Spirit has for you
advice.
at this juncture.
Stop watching porn. Or stop having too
What
much
advice
sex.
does Spirit have for you?
Stop giving energy to someone
Follow
that
your
doesn't
own rhythm.
appreciate
Right
it.
now, do your own thing. Do your own
Exactly.
thing, because they have to do their own thing. They have to really focus on themselves right now. The Spirit is asking you to really just go with the flow. However you feel, you feel. Whatever you want to do, you do. Who you want to talk to, you talk to.
Post extra amount of YouTube videos. For us.
We have spirals of manifestation. You know what I just heard? You've got the power.
Good.
You've got the power. And the card number 18, which is the moon. And the moon is the unknown, right? It's psychic abilities, it's spirit, it's ancestors. It's all of that, but it can also be shadow. But I'm not getting shadow. I'm getting the lighter side of the moon, which is that Cancerian energy, the natural mystic. Spirit saying right now you've got the power. You can manifest anything that you want to, including another karmic cycle if you want to, but I don't think that's where you're heading. All right. And look, I see the energies flowing into her crown now. Beautiful. All right, let's read this one. But you've got the power.
Yay!
All right, spirals of manifestation. The creative, rebellious path of love moves in spirals. It's not linear. Sometimes our mind decides that the way forward is to make clear steps from one point to the next logical point. However, there's a genius within that can guide us on an alternative route, the scenic route. If there's an unnecessary pothole or delay in the typical linear path of progression, and the curve loop in the path will be quicker, more fun, and more beautiful, then why not allow yourself to be guided to that path? This can happen through trust and wisdom rather than rigid adherence to what the surface appears to be logical progression.
When I do so much art, it really means that something's coming up, generally in the collective, next few days. I don't know. We'll see. Real cost of clutter. That's a good question.
Into online cash, but mainly one of the big proponents of privacy at all costs, where not just the data about a message is private, but all of the metadata is private.
Private metadata. I don't know if it's possible to make metadata private.
I'd like to read a quote out to help emphasize the importance of who David Chaum is and what he's done for this industry. This is Chaum's warning to the world in 1985. Where he talks about the dangers of user data that is building up around computing systems. He says computerization is robbing individuals of the ability to monitor and control the ways information about them is used. Already, public and private sector organizations acquire extensive personal information and exchange it amongst themselves. Individuals have no way of knowing if this information is accurate, outdated, or otherwise inappropriate. New and more serious dangers derive from computerized pattern recognition techniques. Even a small group of them tapping into data gathered every day in consumer transactions could secretly conduct mass surveillance, inferring individuals' lifestyles, activities, and associations. The automation of payment and other consumer transactions is expanding these dangers to an unprecedented extent.
What about the skin?
Projecting the vision of these two futures, one built with current technology and one built with decentralized services, David Chaum saw that the two approaches appear to hold quite different answers. Large-scale automated transaction systems are imminent, and as the initial choice for their architecture gathers economic and social momentum, it becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. Whichever approach it prevails, it will likely have a profound and enduring impact on our economic freedom, democracy, and our informational rights. David Chaum said this in 1985, before we had surveillance capitalism, before we had Web 2, and before we have the state of Facebook, Instagram, all this collection of metadata and the reselling ads, there's economic and social momentum, it becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. Whichever approach it prevails, it will likely have a profound and enduring impact on our economic freedom, democracy, and our informational rights. David Chaum said this in 1985.
Wow.
Before we had surveillance capitalism, before we had Web 2, and before we have the state of Facebook, Instagram, all this collection of metadata and the reselling to targeted ads, and all these other practices that we now deem evil in this world, but we now also have to live with. And so David Chaum saw this in 1985, which is one of the reasons why he's such a fantastic character. And he's been dedicating his life to building private cryptographic systems that protect users' data, and not just the not just the contents of messages, but all of the data that those messages leak, as in who is the sender, who's the receiver, how big is that message, what time was that message sent. All all of these bits of data that create a Sudoku puzzle that's solvable to track who we live in the world of what we now call the metaverse, but was previously called just our online footprint. David Chom, his name is on this shirt. If you aren't watching the podcast, it's the shirt with all the cryptographers that this industry is built on. And so I will stop with my gushing and allow this conversation to progress into one of the core cryptographers that this entire crypto industry is built on. After we get to some of these fantastic sponsors that make the show possible. Rocket Pool is your decentralized Ethereum staking protocol. You can stake fast transactions.
You cute though.
Things that captured your attention when you were young.
David Chom.
Well, you know, it was a different growing up than a lot of, I think, your listeners have. So I've had, because, you know, there was the anti-war movement, and I was, you know, very much caught up in all that kind of thing. And, you know, I learned how to program computers by punching the little squares out of the hollerith cards with a toothpick. Then we'd give the deck, and then the next week we'd go to, you know, back to the Science Museum, and they'd give us the output from the, you know, Fortran program, and it would say, you know, invalid punch in column 6, fail, you know, and it was time to repeat this process. You know, so it was, I was interested in all kinds of things, but I think the really powerful force in my youth was the idea that the world really needed, it was going to go off in the wrong direction, and it really needed some help, and the power of secrecy maybe could be leveraged for that. So that's kind of, you know, they say people know their life story when they're 6 or something. Have you ever read that? You know, yeah, so something like that.
Do you have any, what was the indications that came to you that the world was about to go off the rails, for example? Like,
well, don't forget, you know, we think that, you know, like, you know, January 6th was a, you know, unprecedented big deal. But when I was growing up, you know, there was the whole Watergate thing, and people found that, you know, equally shocking. And, you know, I think there's a common thread running through a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's you know, the war in Vietnam was not really that popular, but it was a pretty tragic thing, and I think it polarized and galvanized. But it was a very different era. You know, people were extremely excited about the future as well, because there was a lot.
We all were excited about the future at some point, right?
That,
technology. Like I remember events that my friend held in New York that was specifically about you know, the IoT, you know, smart homes, and she would like tell this huge story, an introduction of how we're gonna be living in our houses, all connected, da 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 da. And we were all listening, and then she became a meditation teacher, and she's like, fuck that story, scratch that.
Yeah, I think the power of technology to influence society, you know, was very much top of mind, also with nuclear weapons, for example, in those days, and, you know, Cold War and all these things. It was... yeah, so as someone interested in technology, I could see that this was something that, you know, could be used by the powers that be in their standard way of using these kind of mechanisms and so on to sort of buttress their position and not really innovatively, or maybe there was a different way through.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you thought about technology back then, back in the 60s, 70s, but also its relationship to politics and institutions. I'm wondering, when did you make that connection, or did you?
I'm afraid I did, and I you know, I could, you know, I got in a little bit of trouble here and there for kind of, you know, doing stuff, and I was
When is this one from?
also, you know, like kind of a
August 9th.
student of what the government was doing with technology, you know, and I would call people up and pretend to be like, you know, I don't know, much older than I was, and find out all kinds of things, and then people started like threatening me because they felt that I was, prying into things that I shouldn't, and so forth. Sometimes like these, I'd call these companies, and then they would kind of send me over to some other guy who tried to entrap me. He was some kind of spook that worked there. I mean, scary stuff like that happened.
This guy is such a badass.
It was a different time. You could order manuals for like, the kind of all kinds of stuff for free, like how to build an IBM System 360 out of, or how to, how the very sophisticated burglar alarm technology worked, or all kinds of stuff was a little more available in those days. And so I was interested in all these things, but with an eye towards seeing how they could be deployed in the people's interests as opposed to institutional interests.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to jump to your time at Berkeley. What was your major at Berkeley?
Oh, well, I was a graduate student there. I had gotten this like 4-year graduate fellowship, Regents 4-year graduate fellowship. They only give one every 2 years, and for UCLA, and I transferred to Berkeley after the first quarter. I was like, I felt, I was much happier there. And but most of the people who were doing cryptography there left. So there were one guy went to work for the government, and another guy went to try to influence government, and so and Merkel had left then, and so on. But it was fantastic being there. It was the beginning of we had my advisor ran the Berkeley Unix distribution project, and so my office mate was Eric Schmidt. Just the two of us sat in this office looking out at the bell tower, and Bill Joy, another founder's son, was kind of around the corner. Talked to him a lot, and so it was a very exciting place. But there was also this feeling like the government wants you to work for them, and a lot of the funding was from DARPA and, all kinds of government agencies and military organizations, and, a lot of big corporation stuff. And then there were a lot of people that didn't really want to participate in that. And,
even then,
I saw one of these, the DARPA funding, they always had the tagline, their posters and stuff, DARPA, a mission-oriented agency. And so I thought, I'm going to be a mission-oriented agency. And I really decided just to devote myself to trying to use cryptography to make the world more, let's say, democratic. And that was my mission. And I've basically stuck with that over the last 40 years, So there were people who were sort of the layer -1 of cryptography, let's say, was public key cryptography, and this was a big deal when it was invented. And, so I knew all these people, like Diffie was a buddy of mine. Then he lived right at the border of Berkeley, but then he moved to Mountain View. And so Marty Hellman and so Ralph Merkel had invented public key cryptography, but no one wanted to publish his paper, so it was only published like 10 years later, with apologies. He didn't. But Diffie and Hellman, their paper was published at a conference, and then it turns out that some smart summer intern at the British NSA had also invented public key cryptography earlier than these guys, and now he's running that place. So and then there was so there was the RSA work as well, and I knew those folks of course as well, and but this was also an era that's hard to appreciate these days, because there was government pressure not to do research in cryptography, public research. And in fact, the head of the National Security Agency, the NSA, it's a pretty serious organization, started in effect saying that cryptography could be considered born classified. Like nuclear secrets. So if you just thought of it yourself, it could still be classified automatically. And so, and there was this guy started writing letters to the major, IEEE, ACM, the major scientific organizations, say, don't have any conferences or sessions on cryptography, we're going to throw the book at you. And this was reported in Science Magazine, and you could read about it on my website, chom.com. And so then I thought, well,
What's your
man, this
website?
cannot stand, because cryptography is too important a technology to empower individuals. And so I sat in got the addresses on paper from Edelman, and we went down to this place where they printed the free press, a little, like, off of Telegraph Avenue, this little print shop where it was like, don't ask, don't tell, just, pay us cash, we'll print stuff. And we're interested that we knew of in the field came to the conference, about 100 people. And, I stood up there, and because as the general chairman and organizer, I just stood up on the stage and said, okay, thanks for coming. Lunch will be at 12:30 or whatever, but bathrooms are over there. But now that you paid your, whatever it was, like $75, you're now a member of the International Association for Cryptologic Research, which I
Nice, no people.
secretly
Where are the
founded.
people?
And these are the officers, and the next event will be in Italy, and this guy's going to run it, so there was a handful of people attending in suits, kind of like with their name badges all said, private citizen from, Laurel, Maryland, where the NSA is headquartered. They didn't want to say that they were working for the NSA, but they were all there in the front row. They were very anxious, and you could just see them all turn green, because it was over. They were trying to stop this research, but at that point, because it was an international organization now, it's basically backed by the UN, and they couldn't stop it, so they never put me in jail or anything. So I said cryptography free, and that's still the major organization by far that does research in cryptography. We have 3 conferences every year, plus a handful of workshops every year, and publish the proceeding, the Journal of Cryptology, and a bunch of proceedings, and it's the main event. So it really created a community. It's pretty vibrant still.
And of course, all of this is going on during the whole counterculture of the late 60s and 70s, right? And I'm wondering how much of that counterculture zeitgeist of the 70s worked its way into the cryptography community? Because it sounds like you are quite rebellious, but I'm wondering, if you were a cryptographer, were you likely also a rebel, or were you more willing to work inside of state lines, or was everyone kind of on board with the whole, we don't work for the government, we work for cryptography? So overall, what would you say is the rebellious nature of the cryptographers back
I don't
then?
want to be lumped in with the rest.
Sure.
I don't think it's fair to do so, because my, angle, if you will, my vector, my approach, my mission has been, as I mentioned, to use cryptography to protect members of society, and to protect democracy, and to allow democracy to flourish. And that entails what is called privacy technology, basically mixing and blind signatures, to put it very simply. I'll refer back maybe to your earlier show you mentioned. So, the rest of the community was not working on that kind of stuff. They're working on the layer below that, which is, encryption and public key encryption. It's a lot of good work and hard work, but it's all about communication security of the very basic type that you understand when you're a little kid. You have the key, you send the message, you encrypt it, you send the message. Counterparty has the key, they decrypt it, and they get it, and the eavesdropper can't hear it. Can't understand it. Can't decipher it. So that was the thing that Zimmerman and all these guys focused on that, and the government was trying to block this sort of thing. They didn't want people to use it, and they were trying to wheel out, since they couldn't do the born classified thing. They were saying, well, now it's export controls and this and that. It's military equipment, and you can't. But that was a whole war, crypto wars, unbelievable. Went on for a long time, and there were all kinds of advocacy groups and people focused on that. But I steered clear of all that. So I was pretty much the only one working on privacy technology, the layer above that. So hiding who talks to who and when, the social graph, what's called preventing traffic analysis, and allowing payments in such a context not to unwind the protections. And so it was a bit different. And only now with the XX network, I don't want to jump forward, but we have this. I founded this project, XX network, and it has a messenger, and it protects privacy. And so for the now, I have to include the end-to-end
look at this.
encryption as well, and be involved in
Wow.
that. But that's another story, because none of the messengers today, even though people moved to them thinking they were more private, none of them has quantum resistant end-to-end encryption, and we do. And we announced it very widely, and no one followed suit. So it's like, I think that proves basically that it has never really been the issue. The real issue is traffic, is the metadata. Since we used to call it, military used to call it traffic analysis, because it's far more revealing and harder to, compromise by lying or, misleading people.
There's a paper that you wrote on this titled Untraceable Electronic Mail Return Addresses and Digital Signatures. But there was a paper, but there was a paper, but I want to get there. But before, there was a paper that you didn't write that was monumental in the world of crypto called A New Direction in Cryptography from Martin Hellman.
That was the Jesse Hellman paper.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could just...
Very, very well. But that was about end-to-end encryption. So basically, it's the thing I was mentioning before. Conventional cryptography, you basically have to drag the key that you make up over to the other person, and then you too can use it to keep the eavesdropper from listening in. With the advent of public key cryptography, which I mentioned that, the different people that come up with it, you could publish one of the keys and anyone could use it to, let's say, encrypt a message that you could receive, that you could uniquely receive. And that made it so you didn't have to physically transport the keys. You still had to make sure you were using the right keys. It's not a complete panacea, but that's right. Yes. Yeah, that was that paper, and I think the RSA paper were, widely heralded and influential. Sort of brought cryptography out from the, little codes that you did as a kid out into this modern cryptography world. But it was fought by governments, and it was a whole war. And in the end, you sort of think the government lost, but really they won, because they were able to delay this dramatically, and I think then in the end misdirect people into focusing on that stuff and ignoring the metadata for the longest time until now.
Right, certainly, yeah, and this goes to what you were saying, where this was the foundation that cryptography is built on, but what you were doing is something a little bit more applied, a little bit more on the data and privacy layer on top of like this basic cryptography. But
you needed new kinds of cryptography in order to do the privacy stuff.
Right.
So the mixing paper that you referenced, you could build that just from public key, just for the basic. But for the payments, which are also needed, you have to have privacy in payments, otherwise it'll ruin the privacy, the unlinkability that you would have in communication, right? You'd be linked by your payments. In order to achieve payment privacy, at least in those days, it was thought that you needed an innovation in the blind signatures, which I created. And I created a whole bunch of other kinds of signatures, and no one else really did, the undeniable signatures and all this other stuff. So it was, it extended the functionality of the primitives with new features that have proved to be of enduring value. And so it wasn't just really building on an earlier layer. It used those things, but it also had fundamental cryptographic insights of its own that enabled its unique protections.
There's a quote that I want to read that I'm hoping that you can help elaborate for the listener. This is coming from Chom's warning to the world in 1985, again from this Before Bitcoin series, where you say that there are dangers of user data that is building up around computing systems. I'm wondering if you could unpack this quote and tell us what this means.
Well, I mean, basically, it was my realization early on that the only way that there were only two ways. You can read in my early papers, like in the Scientific American, and the earlier version of that was published in the academic cover of academic journals. It basically always said there's only two ways that technology could go, and we see it today. It's one way is where the powers that be can see everything you do, and the other way is where you have the keys to prevent that, and you run the show you control the use of your own information by possession of your own keys. And those are the two competing scenarios. There's really no halfway middle ground. And, it's really starting to come to a head now, because the fundamental difference between China, as we perceive it, in the West here, and our ethos of personal liberty and rights and so on, liberal democracy is, it's crystallized in the simple question of, does your messenger allow the government to see who you talk to and when, or not? That's basically what it comes down to. WeChat, people in China know that WeChat, can see everything they do, and that information is available to the government. So it's a kind of panopticon, it has a chilling effect on society, but that's the way they want to do it. And what I said in 2018 was that, the XX network project was going to, and the XX Messenger was going to be a WeChat with privacy built in. And that's what we've done now. And that's the fundamental difference. So
good idea to
you
do
hear a lot about CBDC.
PDFs.
Is that something
No?
you talk about on your?
Certainly.
Or screenshots.
Well, there's only two kinds of CBDC. There's the kind with privacy and the kind without. And, when the European Central Bank had a whole big comment thing on CBDC, the majority of the comments were about privacy, that people wanted it. And so it's not easy to get in a CBDC. But, if we do a CBDC like that is fully surveillance capable, it doesn't give the actual privacy keys to the users, allow them to create them, then, we're not going to have the moral high ground over China. I mean, people are trying to precipitate some kind of new Cold War or something. I'm not a big fan of that, but it would seem that the basis of it is that this is not a free society, and they're spying on people, and the state has too much power, and that really comes down to, can WeChat see who you talk to or not? And what kind of CBDC are we going to build, and what kind of messages are we going to have? The ones that actually let you protect that, or is going to be like, trust us, the government has the keys because we might need to check on you, and all that. That's basically the fork in the road. And I wrote about that and saw that very early on,
Hardware
in no
privacy.
uncertain terms, and it remains the central issue because it's so fundamental. There's no way to protect your own information unless you have the keys to it. You just can't trust other people with your keys, because you don't know if they leak what they leak and what they do. And so it's as simple as that.
This is one of the immaculate parts of your story, I think, is that in 1985, you talked about this fork in the road where one would lead to a panopticon and one would lead to user privacy. And it seems to have gone true.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
Yes.
And it seems to only get more and more and more true as our technology these days becomes more and more powerful.
No, yeah, people are realizing it now. The surveys show, we hear a lot about Web3, but look at the surveys. They show, international and U.S. surveys, the major, giant thousands of people surveyed show that people find, three-quarters of people find privacy of the internet, so Web 2, as the biggest problem, the one thing they really don't like. It's also the top three things they don't like, and have different names, So it's like the world has come around to the, so if you're going to build Web 3, you better build something that people want, which is something that allows them to protect their own information. It's not good enough that you say you're going to protect it, or that there's a presumption that you will. That's just not going to cut it these days. And so that's the hope for me for Web3, and that's basically WeChat with privacy inside. That's the thin end of the wedge, and then from there you can build out more privacy platform, and then there's other things that you want to decentralize, of course, and and I mean, and I'm not trying to diminish the significance of the new kind of models and paradigms that have emerged from the crypto and blockchain space. I mean, there's a lot of interesting new stuff, but that's the fundamental divide. Yeah, still.
What would you say? Can you take us back to David Traum in 1985 and tell us what made it so obvious that there was this massive fork in the road? Like, what did you see that no one else saw back in 1985?
I saw it in the late 70s, actually.
Late
79.
70s?
Yeah, was the first. I published the mixing article, which now there's 65,000 references to in technical papers. I don't know what that translates into in terms of likes, but I think it's a lot. And so, because it's not, they had to say something about it, I guess. So, it's, that I was sitting in the hot tub in Berkeley with my professor.
Great.
Yeah, okay, we were wearing, swim trunks or whatever. It was like a, but, it was like, he had this hot tub in his backyard. He said, come on over, our house, we'll talk, about your research. And, that's the way it was. It's not like now, where people are afraid of, you go to the professor's house and hang out. And so he had like the redwood trees in his backyard, sitting there and looking up at the redwood trees and try to figure out, well, if we really need to solve the privacy problem, how can we work on that? Well, let's see, what would be the simplest kind of basic problem that you could start
Let's
with,
revive that.
to kind of toy problem to work on it. That's the way often you sort of get make progress in science. And so, I said, well, voting, let's work on voting. And so I came up with MixNets to solve voting. And it's still in that mixed paper. There's a couple paragraphs on the voting, but it's a little bit broader than that. Then I read this article, this guy named Paul Barron at the Rand Institute, like these kind of government-sponsored think tank that, was involved in all kinds of spooky stuff. They were talking about traffic analysis and all this, and I'm like, this is bad news. So yeah, I was like doubly motivated to work on it in those days. So I think what gave me the insight that circle back to your question is that I knew that you could solve it. I think that it's still the case. A lot of people think, I can't. I know they're spying on me. They're spamming me with fake news. They're this and that. They're exploiting my data for making money off it. But what can I do? I need to be on this or that platform to, there's nowhere else to go. Really, you can't really vote with your feet. I mean, some of the platforms that have held themselves out, like I said, to provide privacy, I now really question. I don't want to, malign them, but I challenge you to find any messenger besides the Elixir that actually uses quantum resistant security on the end-to-end encryption. So they've always been saying use end-to-end encryption. That's the be-all. That's why you should move to our. But it's fake because they're not upgrading it, and the U.S. government has, there's a presidential directive. All government has to use quantum resistant VPN and everything, because otherwise, the point is, for privacy, if you may think quantum resistance has some tinfoil hat connection, but it actually, for privacy, it's like extremely conservative and solid, because it's not questioned that quantum computers will ultimately be able to break these codes.
Right.
that are used to, because people use public key to set up the communications, quantum computers can break it. And so,
Yeah.
ironically, so, it, Ed Snowden told us that the government was involved in what they called the full take. They capture everything and they save it. They've always been doing that. We knew that back in the day. The NSA said, "Oh, send us your used magnetic tapes with all those phone records on them. We'll give you brand new tapes in exchange." And the phone company said, "Oh, that's great." It's like, yeah, they have these huge facilities, so you could, look them up online. It's frightening. They store all this stuff, and they're just waiting, or maybe they already have quantum computers or whatever. When they're interested enough, they'll be able to look into that data retroactively. And so governments have taken the affirmative action to stop this possibility, and I think that the public should as well. But the people that we're trusting to help us seem to be asleep at the switch. And that's leaving the whole metadata issue out. There is no messenger out there besides Elixir that's protecting your metadata. So they all just keep talking about how they have strong end-to-end encryption, but it's not that strong anymore.
Sure.
It's public key based, which means it can be broken by a quantum computer. So, yeah, I mean, roughly speaking, it's based on, earlier and government standardized public key systems, which are, so yeah, I think it was, the more I looked into it, okay, and I said, well, great, I've got this communication system that can solve the metadata problem, that can keep confidential who you talk to and when, but then I had to find a way to do payments over that system that doesn't undo the privacy, and I found that. And then the third and final piece with blind signatures was that the blind signatures could actually be generalized into what I call the credential mechanism, which you might think of as a kind of zero knowledge minimum disclosure proofs or something like that, but it's a little different than that, that allows you to basically answer, you can keep the full database of information about yourself that normally would be, under the current paradigm, would be maintained piecemeal by different organizations, government agencies and companies and so on. And they could potentially link all your records together by your identity, right? You could maintain all that data yourself. They wouldn't have it because you would deal with each of them under a different digital pseudonym, a different public key. And then if they wanted to know something about you, they could ask you. And then you could answer if you chose to in whatever way you wanted, but then you could prove that your answer was correct with like zero knowledge, minimum disclosure. This was the cryptographic stuff. So that you could achieve. So basically you could organize society that way. Only you would know who you talk to when, even privately, and the database of information about yourself would be your exclusive property. But I argued in those papers in the mid-'80s that the data that organizations would get would actually be better and more useful to them. Because right now they ask you to voluntarily tell them all this stuff, and you could lie to them and so on. And then they have to sift through all this. And whereas this way, you just answer the exact question that they want to know. Are you allowed to be here in this event? Do you have a driver's license? You pay your car insurance? Are you at least 18 years old? Whatever. And you just say, yes, I am qualified. And that's it. They don't need to know all the, supporting information. And why do they need it? It doesn't really help them. And then, so it's a better way to do it. And I showed how to do that in the Scientific American article, Achieving Electronic Privacy and its More Technical Antecedents. So once I realized that you could do all three parts, just all you really need, that's when that caused me to double down on my commitment to try to push this all forward. But the public awareness wasn't really there, of course. Right. Back in the day, you talk about privacy, it sounds like a very kind of wimpy, issue or some kind of thing. But now, there's a massive recognition that this is the whole game, I think. That's what I've always realized.
You said the phrase minimum disclosure. I'm wondering if you could just unpack and elaborate on what that means and how you might organize that around as a principle.
It's a different kettle of fish. So I was at an event in Marseille, at a university called Lumini. It was a little mansion, and there were these ladies there in cook outfits making this giant kettle of Marseille fish soup to celebrate the end of our 1 week conference on randomness. But at that conference, I presented a model that a technique basically permuted the circuit diagrams, and you can still see it on my website, that on my publications, strom.com, that with Crepeau and Brassard, I believe, that included both models, both what's called zero knowledge and what's called minimum disclosure. And the zero knowledge people just hated us, and they kept trying to say, oh, you didn't really do it, and, suppressing our papers and the references. It was so painful and, dishonest in my view. But in any case, we cut a deal with them that they would call the more, so the one model minimum disclosure, and they would call the model that they created zero knowledge. So I showed you could do both. One construction that could do either, mix and match them, and then also, if you look on my website, the Spy Masters Double Agent, that showed how you can combine all the models and get the best of both worlds. So it's that's why. So it was a weird political thing that happened in science, and that's why it's called minimum disclosure. But it just depends on whether you want the secrets to be protected unconditionally, in other words, against a quantum computer and infinite computing power, or whether you're willing to allow the secrets to be protected by some problem that you assume is hard to solve. And so, of course, in my early career, I was all about protecting secrets unconditionally, because I argued that, how could an individual know what kind of computing power, governments would have or in the future and so on. But it turns out that in voting, what you really want to be sure of is that the outcome is correct. And so what we proved is you can't have it both ways. You have the secrecy of the secrets and the correctness of the outcome, and one of them can be unconditional, and that forces the other one, at best, forces the other one to be based on a computational assumption, assuming a certain kind of problem can't be solved. And so for voting, you want you want to do it the other way. And can I just interject something about voting? I don't want to. I just want to mention this because it's another thing a lot of people don't realize, and it's very interesting to me, because we just solved it. We just got this paper accepted in the last couple of weeks. So there's this long-standing issue with voting technology. You want to vote online, you're not in a booth. So someone could bribe you or coerce you, like threaten you, and there's you could live stream your voting act. So there has not been a satisfactory solution to that in the literature. If you look at my website, you see I did a lot to try to create a voting technology community as well. The books that I published and stuff. So it turns out that we finally found a way to do it, and it's called votexx.org. You can see it, but basically it just says it's kind of like quantum mechanics. It's an interesting result. I won't go into it here, but it's quite practical, and we've built the software for it, and we're going to let a lot of people help us, and some people have volunteered to incentivize that process, and so we're going to try to make it really usable, but the basic algorithms are running, and so we proved it with the strongest type of proofs, which is the so-called universal composability framework proof. So it's like really strong, but basically it renders voting improperly influenceable. You can't coerce or bribe voters to see to flourish, because I think you need a little more voting and a little more sample voting, if you can read about it on my website, you know, that's the way I think it really needs to be done, because that scales with the complexity of society, you know, and that is and I've got some new results coming out, is, you know, it obviates a lot of these theorems like Arrow's theorem and stuff like that, you know, big problems with social choice theory. So it's, sample voting is a really, really nice, but it means that people aren't always voting at the same time, so you can't really go to booths. You got to do it. You got to be able to do it. That's what everyone realizes. You got democracy to flourish. You got to be able. You can't have the booths, because booths sometimes they spy on you. People, you know, harass you. You can't get there. All this stuff, and you know, and here, you know, like in LA, you know, there's a lot of polling places that never open every election. Handful of them. You know, because we solved that recently in the Vote XX, and that it's a subtle thing, but it was the final sort of missing link to allow.
Makes a lot of sense. La 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 la. I love my work.
Yeah, it wasn't just really building on an earlier layer. It used those things, but it also had fundamental cryptographic insights of its own that enabled its unique protections.
There's a quote that I want to read that I'm hoping that you can help elaborate for.
In those days, so you know, I think what gave me the insight that, you know, circle back to your question is that I knew that you could solve it. I think that, you know, it's still the case. A lot of people think, oh, you know, I can't. I know they're spying on me. They're spamming me with fake news. They're this and that. They're exploiting my data for making money off it. But you know, what can I do? I need to be on this or that platform to, you know, there's nowhere else to go. Really, you can't really vote with your feet. I mean, some of the platforms that have held themselves out, like I said, to provide privacy, I now really question. I don't want to, you know, malign them, but I challenge you to find any messenger besides the Elixir that actually uses quantum resistant security on the end-to-end encryption. So they've always been saying use, you know, end-to-end encryption. That's the be-all. That's why you should move to our. But it's fake because they're not upgrading it, and the U.S. government has. You know, there's a presidential directive. All government has to use quantum resistant VPN and everything, because otherwise, you know, the point is, you know, for privacy, if, you know, you may think quantum resistance has some tinfoil hat connection, but it actually, for privacy, it's like extremely conservative and solid, because it's not questioned that quantum computers will ultimately be able to break these codes.
Right.
That
Please.
are used to, you know, because people use public key to set up game. I think that's what I've always pledged.
You said the phrase minimum disclosure. I'm wondering if you could just unpack and elaborate on what that means and how you might organize that around as a principle.
Kettle of fish. So I was at an event in Marseille, at a university called Lumini. It was a little mansion, and there were these ladies there in cook outfits making this giant kettle of. So we proved it with the strongest type of proofs, which is the practice. The only really way
is this what supports? Is this what supports this like surveillance capitalism that we have today, where I get targeted ads based off of certain data that I like exhaust into the internet? Is this that same problem that we're talking about?
It's tightly coupled. I mean, yeah, there, in a lot of cases, Web 2, you have no real choice. You sign up naively for this service, so you start exposing a lot of data to it. They have a lot of data internally. They don't need to do traffic analysis. I mean, they can just link all kinds of things. They have the data, and that's, I think, a part of it. But yes, those surprising little ads you get or whatever, these funny things, yeah, that's when one service links to another just based on your IP address, for example. Yeah, so it's it's extremely porous, and maybe the wrong analogy. It's easily interlinked based on like just riffing on what I was saying about breaking a messenger's traffic data. But there's a lot of different sources of data, and it's not hard to link them all together because they're all based in effect on your identity. It could be your IP address, your name, your Google, whatever. But it's your location. There's a lot of different clues, and you can just link it all together. That's why, in like you said, in the mid '80s, I said, look, we got to. The only way to so that you can control your own information is just to make sure that you talk to everyone under a different pseudonym, and you talk over a mixed network. So there is no metadata linking. There is no one knows your IP address. Right, that's how people were surprised to see how much Bitcoin what they're doing with Bitcoin. Right, that's the IP address. No one sees your IP address because you speak over a mixed network, and use a different pseudonym. So yes, you can authenticate yourself as the owner of that account or whatever, and you can prove that your answers are correct with minimum disclosure, as we've discussed, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't have to allow those entities that you talk to know enough about you to link whatever it is they're collecting about, each one has collected about you, to the stuff that the other ones have collected. Mm-hmm. That's precluded by that technique. You divide them up, you partition them, you build in, firewalls between them because you use different identities with each one. That's the only way.
I think that the metaphor in the crypto world is that it would be like if you made a new transaction with a brand new wallet every single time.
Well, no, but that's not going to do it. But yes, but with a different IP address.
With a different IP, well, yes, right.
The only way to get that different IP address is to use a mixed network to appear somewhere else in the world. So basically, you're going to have mixing, and you're going to have digital pseudonyms, and you have to have a way to prove stuff between them if you want to benefit from your, you can do everything totally a la carte, but if you want to be able to say, well, look, I paid my taxes, I've got this much money in the bank, I paid my insurance, I got this advanced degree or whatever it is, this passport, this, I'm at this age or whatever, then you need to have a credential mechanism that allows you to prove things about the statements that each individual organization gives you under the respective pseudonym that you uniquely use with them.
Mm-hmm. There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course, Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets. The Brave browser is the user-first browser for the Web3 internet, with over 60 million monthly active users. And inside the Brave browser, you'll find the Brave Wallet, the secure multi-chain crypto wallet built right into the browser. Web3 is freedom from big tech and Wall Street, more control and better privacy. But there's a weak point in Web3, your crypto wallet. And most crypto wallets are browser extensions, which can easily be spoofed. But the Brave Wallet is different. No extensions are required, which gives Brave browser an extra level of security versus other wallets. Brave Wallet is your secure passport for the possibilities of Web3, and and supports multiple chains, including Ethereum and Solana. You can even buy crypto directly inside the wallet with Ramp. And of course, you can store, send, and swap your crypto assets, manage your NFTs, and connect to other wallets and DeFi apps. So whether you're new to crypto or you're a seasoned pro, it's time to ditch those risky extensions, and it's time to switch to the Brave wallet. Download Brave at brave.com/bankless and click the wallet icon to get started. The Layer 2 era is upon us. Ethereum's Layer 2 ecosystem is growing every day, and we need Layer 2 bridges to be fast and efficient in order to live a Layer 2 life. Across is the fastest, cheapest, and most secure cross-chain bridge. With Across, you don't have to worry about high fees or long wait times. Assets are bridged and available for use almost instantaneously. Across's bridges are powered by UMA's optimistic oracle to securely transfer tokens between Layer 2s and Ethereum. Across is critical ecosystem infrastructure, and Across V2 has just launched. Their new version focuses on higher capital efficiency, Layer 2 to Layer 2 transfers, and a brand new chain with Polygon, all while prioritizing high security and low fees. You can be a part of Across's story by joining their Discord and using Across for all of your Layer 2 transferring needs. So go to across.to to quickly and securely bridge your assets between Ethereum, Optimism, Polygon, Arbitrum, or Boba networks. And I want to go back to this fork in the road comment, and there's another quote that I want to read that I thought was really, really powerful.
Okay.
This is from an article that says, projecting the vision of the two futures, one built with the current technology and one built with decentralized services, David saw that their two approaches appear to hold quite different answers. Large-scale automated transaction systems are imminent, and as the initial choice for their architecture gathers economic and social momentum, it becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. Whichever approach prevails, it will likely have a profound and enduring impact on economic freedom, democracy, and our informational rights. Now, sadly, I already kind of know, David, which path we went down. It's kind of the one that we give away all of our privacy. But I'm wondering, like, if we go back to 1985 and look, and then zoom forward to where we are today, is it as bad as you worried about? Is it not as bad currently? The state of like user sovereignty and user data today, is it as bad as you thought it could get? Is it worse? Is it better? Just like how bad is it? And like, what were your thoughts on where we are today?
Well, it's pretty bad currently. Much worse than it seems to be because, you know, as they say, they keep it all hid. You know, if you had a lot massive data, you're not going to, you know, announce it. And there's a lot of progress in machine learning and so on that's unreported, and that, you know, people economically benefit enormously from this data capture, as you know, and they're, you know, going ahead very aggressively trying to, you know, squeeze more out of it. But what I would like to, so it's worse than you think. However, in my own defense, I want to say that if you go back and read those, you know, those statements, what I actually, let's say, prophesized was not so much an inevitability. I mean, I was trying to, you know, scare people, say, you know, it could get really bad, hard to dig your way out of. But, you know, what I prophesized was that, you know, it would be kind of a Hegelian, you know, thing. You know, the people would get all riled up and push back and win some stuff back. It would become a bit of a struggle. And but make no mistake, you cannot win a local war. You know, it's one thing. It's you know, it's all that data is leakable or not. You're either hosed or you're not. You can't have it halfway. You know, it's not like, well, it's pretty much okay because in this part it's, you know, okay. But what I will say also, though, to qualify that briefly, and I think, and importantly, is that, and this is an insight that I've had subsequent to those publications, you know, I mean, because of the Internet of Things, let's say, and all the cameras that people seem to have put up with, and all this existing data that's out there, right? You know, there are certain things that are pretty much hopeless and probably not worth fighting about. And there's certain, you know, when you're walking down the street, you know, you're going to wear a bag over your head or what, you know, it's kind of hard to really win in that domain. So what I argue now is that what is strictly needed for democracy to prevail is that individuals must have a protected sphere where they are certain that they are free to discuss political and other matters, and pay for information and be paid for information with their, let's say, friends and family and their people that they want to communicate with. You must have that protected sphere, otherwise you cannot have democracy. It's a necessary condition, and now with the stuff we know about voting and so on, it's actually sufficient to have democracy, and then that democracy can later, say, take the cameras down and do this. But you've got to get over the idea that the government needs to see everything you do. You have to give people a protected sphere, or there is no possibility that they can really be participants in a democracy. So, if you want to say that we're different from China, then you either have to provide the protected sphere wholeheartedly, no secret little holdbacks, or just just give it up and say, okay, we're just going to spy on everybody just like they do, and there's no real difference. That's my I think that's a very pragmatic approach. So it's very optimistic because the XX network has those capabilities already. We have a way to have those protected spheres. A thing that just to drive it home for a minute, a colorful thing is, that I don't know how many of your listeners realize that coffee was criminalized both in England and also in the Middle East for the longest time by rulers who felt that if people got together in coffee houses, who knows what they would be talking about. Look it up, it's startling, and this was
revolutionary thought.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. So, like 500 years, so it's like, this is, I think it makes the point, you need, there was this bookstore in San Francisco, I think it's defunct now, but it was called A Clean, Well-Lighted Place for Books. I always like the name of it. You need a protected sphere, a place where you can be you, where you can have an actual political consciousness and development and discuss issues and actually meaningfully participate in governance. Absent that, there's no democracy, and it's not much to ask for. And if you try to criminalize that, claiming some kind of abuse of this or that, I mean, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah, sure, there might be some trade-offs, and I don't want to get into all this kind of guns don't kill people, it's the people, whatever. But no, you want democracy, that is a necessary condition. So just understand that and get over it. And, like the thing is that, the NSA said, oh, we need to spy on everybody. And they had all these programs, spent billions and billions of dollars. They never caught anybody. And if you read the reports on that, it's just ridiculous. They had all this surveillance and they never really found any, so it's like, okay, if there are a few people that are really doing evil, then follow them around, use the old. You don't need to use the new techniques to stop that. It isn't at that scale. There's really no rationalization for it. And then if you take it to the next level, I mean, those countries that try to suppress this will lose out, in my view, in the medium term, because there's so much economic opportunity in creating, let's say, a level playing field for financial transactions and services globally. We're paying basically $3 trillion annually in fees for financial services. It depends on your school of economics, but that's at a huge cost to society. And one thing that blockchain has done is shown that you don't actually need that. You can do financial service. I mean, 2 trillion of that is payments. You can do it without, this whole huge overhead. And so when if you unleash this, there's a lot of economic opportunity there. And if those governments that don't have a way to allow people to pay their taxes meaningfully, in that context will suffer. They'll either try to stop it, and that'll be horrible for them, or they won't get the revenue, and that could be a big problem. And so those kind of techniques that I mentioned, the credential mechanism, will allow you to say, okay, I'm proving that I'm paying the correct taxes without telling you anything about what I'm doing. And that's way better for, just like I was saying, for, for companies, that's way better, because now they actually have a proof. You send in taxes, who knows, it's really true, whatever, everyone's fudging on it. Depends on the country, right? In Brazil, it's like 50% fudging. I think that's what I heard when I was there. So it's, you basically prove that you're paying the right amount, and that's it, done. So that's far better strategy for a liberal democracy than trying to say, oh, no, we can't let you have your protected sphere because it's just too dangerous to society. That's it's really a doomed take. So we are at a critical juncture.
Certainly. I'd like to actually zoom back in time really quick, because there's this line that stuck out to me while I was doing some of my homework from one of your head teachers, I believe at Berkeley, and it was while you were working on your mixed networks.
Yeah.
And your head teacher said, and this is when you were getting into.
Manuel Blum was the head of the department. He's a theoretical computer scientist. I took his graduate theory seminar, and I'm the only one who got an A+ in it, because I proved a more general result in half a page. All his star students like Macaulay and so on, they didn't do anywhere near as well as it. But I wasn't a theory student,
right?
So, but yeah, Manny was quite a presence in the department.
And again, this is going, I believe, with mixed networks, which is the concept of like decentralization, but all the way back then. And he said, don't work on this, because you can never tell the effects of a new idea on society.
That's right.
What did you think when your professor told you this?
Well, this was about my dissertation topic, which was, you'll see it on my website, is actually blockchain. It was actually it was called computer systems established, maintained, and trusted by mutually suspicious parties. It was a way to do a consensus, with cryptography, with a bunch of nodes, and they could add nodes and take them out and so on. This was, aimed at providing multi-party computation, which later I found a theoretical way to solve, and that's you can also read about that on my website. The spy master's double agent problem that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, so in that it's in the acknowledgments of my dissertation. I thanked Manuel Blum for trying to tell me that you could never anticipate the effect of technologies on society. This is a common thing that's believed, because it's too hard to anticipate, so I should not work on things that I thought would make the world better, because who knows, they might make it worse. But I dedicated it to him because I said it was the rejection of that principle that, was the motivation for doing this dissertation, because I think that privacy technology is different from other technologies in that respect. The only known use is really to allow, liberal democracy to flourish. It's really only about empowering people. You don't need anything fancy to allow, like what I call a monolithic model of security, where, it's all controlled by the government and everything's hierarchical. And so there's no real evil use for privacy technology in my view. It's our main way through. It's the way to make information technology create a new world that we would like to live in, as opposed to a new world that we really will not like to live in.
David Traum, privacy is the way to have a flourishing liberal democracy is definitely one of the subtexts that we talk about on this Bankless podcast. So you could not have said it better myself. If you had a message for the cryptocurrency industry, not the cryptography industry, what would it be? What would you say to the collective cryptocurrency industry?
Well, Well, I mean, it's been a blast. It's been so, what has been achieved is so fantastic because you've created so much outside of the control of government. It's caused a lot of heads to turn and possibilities to be opened up. And, it's a very exciting community. And, I'm thrilled that I, could have been doing some of the early work that, that led to this. But I think it's also, don't forget about the kind of future we're trying to build here. Also, that would be, I guess, based on, but I mean, it's not front and center. It's not everyone's focus. It is mine. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that one can force this through. I mean, you have to find sort of a way to incentivize everyone, and then sort of spread the word and create a situation where it's everyone's pulling in together to make it happen. But I guess right now we have the wind at our back because the vast majority of the public realizes this is what's needed. It's quite different from just even a few years ago. It's really, it's a profound opportunity at this moment. And so I hope we can seize it. And
trying to get the crypto world to zoom out and focus on the long term sometimes only works in the bear markets and not the bull markets.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an optimistic way to look at the current situation. Yeah, people can work on stuff now because when things are really I hear you. That's a good point. Yeah, this is the time to do it. And I'm certainly trying to double down and move this all forward. And I'm excited. I mean, it's a little bit of unfortunate that we can't all meet and although it was kind of wearing me out,
Tell me.
But it's hopefully, I mean, I think it's certain. I believe it's certain that we're going to pull through this, and it's and I think you're right. We will probably come out way more medium-term focused than we were when we went in. And so that's a huge opportunity right there. Yeah.
Certainly. The other fantastic thing I really enjoy about this industry is that the cryptocurrency industry stands on top of the cryptography industry, but the cryptography industry it was built in the 60s and thrived in the 70s and then came alive in the 80s, and that is not that long ago. And so it's an honor, David, to be able to talk to you and host you on this podcast, because we stand on top of the shoulders of giants, and you are one of those giants that the entire industry stands upon. So just thank you so much for everything you've done for the world of data, privacy, cryptography, and allowing us to have this flourishing ecosystem to play fun games in.
Well, thanks for recognizing it, David. And I have to say, watch this space, as they say. I've got some new stuff which I'm very, very excited about. Some of it you can see on my website. Some of it's not up yet, but I was, even though we solved the basic problems and our current stuff is really enough to move things forward. There's some interesting new developments that I'm also super excited about, and I urge you to your listeners to keep their ears open for some new stuff coming out soon. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Certainly, we will put all of the links to chom.com, I believe, in the show notes, and also everything about links out to XX Network as well.
Awesome. This was so great. Thank you so much.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber
Good
to get
times,
the
huh?
most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks.
Let's go.
Once all of these things are done, like, I will say this. If this is all done and then nothing else ever changes after that, then I'll be extremely happy.
Hey, Bankless listeners, at the end of this podcast, Ryan and I unpack this whole entire episode in our debrief. This is something that we only give to... Thank you, Uniswap, for sponsoring Bankless.
Bankless Nation, we are super excited to introduce our next guest, who requires no introduction, really. Been on the podcast multiple times. Vitalik Buterin is on Bankless today. He's the creator of Ethereum, writer at Vitalik.ca,
Such an
a
Arcturian.
popular Bankless guest. We have a number of episodes with Vitalik. Welcome
These
back,
both
Vitalik.
as well. Like, look, they all look the same. They're Arcturians. They look exactly the same. Why Arcturians are on the front page of my life these days? I don't know. Maybe because a lot of me is Arcturian, but wow.
You wrote called The End Game, which chronicles, I think, or describes maybe an end game situation for all blockchains, all layer ones. But we also have the privilege of recording this toward the end of the year. So we can't pass up an opportunity to talk about some reflections for 2021, just to get us kickstarted. So what did you think of 2021 for crypto? Like high level, okay? A lot of people say it was a very good year for crypto. I think they're mainly talking about prices. Maybe they're also talking about adoption and mainstream attention. What are your thoughts on 2021? Was it a good year for crypto? What did you think about it?
I definitely think it was a great year for adoption and for mainstream attention. I mean, the rise of NFTs was definitely something really fascinating to see, and I think it's brought a lot of people into the crypto space that would not have gone into it before. I think things like well, at least to me, like blockchains are about creating these innovative new ways to organize society, and in some ways, to me, like what's happening with artists being able to sell NFTs really is a realization of that spirit, because like we actually are giving people who are creating art new business models. We're giving the creators of this thing that's very valuable, but that often has a hard time getting business models, a new way to actually get funding. So that's something that's been very interesting to and exciting for me. The rise of DAOs is definitely also interesting and exciting. We've been seeing more and more DAOs that are actually doing lots of interesting things, experimenting with different governance algorithms, projects like CityDAO that are actually trying to do things in the physical world. So that has all been fun. The progress that we have seen in layer 2 scaling, I think, has been really amazing. Like we've actually, I think, over the course of this year, really seen layer 2s go from theory to practice. At the beginning of this year, there were only like 1 or 2 layer 2s on mainnet, and they either only pretty much all only supported a couple of applications. And now we have this thriving ecosystem, and people are really experiencing what a layer 2 Ethereum looks like firsthand. So lots of progress on adoption, lots of progress on tech, definitely lots of happy things to report this year.
Vitalik, one thing I've gathered while being in this space for a number of years, I got in 2017, Ryan got in a little bit before me, but I hear all these crazy cerebral conversations that happened in the Bitcoin space, in the very early Ethereum space from 2011 to 2015. And just like about what the possibilities of crypto could be. And I'm from my perspective, my limited perspective, because I've only been here for so long, is that 2021 was a year where so many of these high in the sky, like very, very cerebral possibilities of crypto actually started to happen. Like NFTs and unique tokens were a conversation very, very early, as well as DAOs, even though we didn't call them DAOs way back when. Would you say that 2021 was the year that crypto actually started to unlock some of these early theorized use cases that were, only conversations back 5 years ago?
I would definitely say so.
Fantastic.
So Vitalik, let's talk about Ethereum for a minute. And one of these days we're gonna have you on Bankless and actually not talk about Ethereum, maybe not talk about crypto, because I know you have tons of varied interests and a lot of insights on many topics. But today is not that podcast, okay? We want to talk about Ethereum. Going into 2022 in particular. So when listeners hear this, it'll be the first week of January 2022. We want to talk a little bit about the roadmap for Ethereum moving forward. But before we do, let's talk about the progress Ethereum made last year in 2021. So what were some of the main accomplishments, milestones? I know you mentioned layer 2. That's probably chief among them. Are there any others at the protocol level?
Yeah, so I think if we focus on layer 1, some of the big things are, one is that the beacon chain just proved itself. It's turned from being this very early thing into an increasingly mature ecosystem. It also had its first hard fork, the Altair hard fork, which of course added the kind of basic scaffolding that we need to have light client support. And it was also just the first ever beacon chain hard fork, which is an important trial run for the merge. So the next beacon chain hard fork, and most likely the next execution chain hard fork will actually be the merge. So that's exciting. Speaking of the merge, we also have testnets for the merge now. The Kintsugi testnet launched a couple of weeks ago. And of course, the Kintsugi testnet was not even the first testnet of the merge. There were a couple of other smaller ones that have been running for a couple of months. But Kintsugi is one that is much bigger than before, many more participants than before, more extensive than before. Anyone could go and participate, and I even got some Kintsugi ETH from the Kintsugi faucet a couple of weeks ago. So that has also been, I think, a lot of great progress. A lot of just interesting infrastructure projects that have been coming of age. So Proof of Humanity has matured a lot, and it's been seeing a lot of usage. Sign in with Ethereum has been seeing a lot of adoption, and that just went from, I think, an idea that a few people were thinking about to something that lots of people are excited about starting to adopt and use over the last few months. What cross layer 2 bridging, still in its infancy, but much better than what it was a year ago, which is basically not existing at all. But account abstraction, there are testnet versions of ERC 4337. This is something that hasn't really gotten into the public discourse yet, but it's moving forward quietly. A lot of progress there. So, lots of small things, lots of progress on the various spec items that haven't been released yet, but that we're going to talk about through the rest of this episode probably. Just a whole bunch of really meaningful progress on I think pretty much all of the big things that we care about.
And by the way, for people listening on YouTube, this is the testnet you were referring to, Vitalik, I believe. So what are we looking at? So this is Kintsugi, which is the newest. Is this the Beacon Chain Plus, Ethereum 1 sort of testnet? This is basically the merge.
This is a testnet of the merge.
Okay, testnet of the merge. So, what can people do here? Is this mainly for developers, or is there anything? Is there?
They can connect. They can connect nodes. They can become stakers. They can launch contracts and trade coins around.
This is it, though. This is the merge, right? This is the thing that is going to be put in production. So, what has to happen between now and the time the merge goes through? Is it just a lot of testing, a lot of validation?
Yeah. Definitely a lot of testing and auditing and all of that. The one piece that I'm aware of that's still the furthest from being certain is how clients would sync after the merge. Basically, the problem is that the way that proof of work syncs and the way that proof of stake syncs are a bit different from each other, and so there's a bit of engineering that needs to be done to put the two together. But this is something that people have already been aware of for a while, and so there's a lot of things in progress and being implemented. So I think so far things are mostly going smoothly.
Taking another opportunity to zoom out, the Ethereum protocol has developed throughout 2021, but there's also what I like to call meta development, which is just defining and understanding the long-term roadmap of Ethereum to an actual concrete specific detail. And sometimes in Ethereum's history, there wasn't all that much that with regards to details in the future. I remember in 2017, I didn't really know what was going to be happening next in Ethereum 6 months out, but it seems to be that the meta development of Ethereum has gotten a lot more robust, and partly that's illustrated by that infographic that we're going to pull up here in a second. But Vitalik, Ethereum changes every single year. 2015 Ethereum is different than 2016 Ethereum, and so on and so forth. How would you contextualize overall with the grand Ethereum vision for what it wants to be, and then also where it is in 2021? How far along are we? Are we like 60% of the way there? Are we 40% of the way there? And then if we could just give a grade towards just the progress made so far, how would you evaluate it?
I would say around 50. I'd be willing to go past 60 once the merge is fully complete. And I'd be willing to, go past 80 once we have a full sharding implementation. But I think those two biggest items are definitely getting closer and closer, but they're not yet in the rear view mirror.
That's really cool. Over 50%. We're getting close then. Very neat. So let's talk about what's coming. So David used this term, I guess meta development, the roadmap. Roadmap to me, at least this year, for Ethereum has never been clear, which is super cool. And you put out this infographic on Ethereum's birthday. Not its birthday, the Beacon Chain launch birthday, December 1st, that kind of highlighted progress across a number of different work streams. So I'm going to go through those really quick at the high level, and then let's take some time to talk about each of them. So, and by the way, I love these nicknames that you used, you christened. They have a nice flow to them. The first is the merge. The second is the purge. Then we get the verge. Sorry, I messed this up. The first is the merge. The second is the surge. The third is the verge, the purge, then the splurge. So these are 5 different work streams. The merge is really when proof of stake comes about and proof of work finally dies. The surge is about scalability, particularly for rollups. We'll talk about that. The verge is all around stateless clients, making Ethereum nodes easier to run. The purge has a bit of technical debt elimination, but also eliminating historical data if you want to find out more. And the splurge, of course, any good splurge is, all about the extras, all about the goodies. And so we got some goodies on the roadmap as well. I'm going to show that infographic as we talk about each of these areas. But to me, the Ethereum roadmap has really never been clear. And maybe we could address these things one by one, Vitalik. So let's talk about, and I think they're kind of in order maybe of how soon they're going to happen. Is that the case? So the merge is going to happen first?
So time is left to right.
Time is left to right.
There's no up to down time dimension.
Okay.
Hence why the time arrow at the top goes left to right. So
okay, very good.
Parallel.
But we should say the merge is probably going to be the thing that's happening first. And maybe we should start with that. So tell us about the merge.
Sure. So the merge is the same thing that the merge has always been. It's the full transition away from proof of work to proof of stake. So there has actually been there's a lot of stuff that has already been done for proof of stake that's in the kind of what's already behind us column to the left. So the Beacon Chain already exists. There's already been a warm-up fork. Proof of stake already has Litecoin friendliness. But what's left to actually get to the merge, right? So the most recent thing that was finished is the full specification of the merge process. So the specification, not just of what post-merge Ethereum looks like, but even of how the transition process works. So how the process works of actually changing from one to the other, what is the final proof of work block going to be, how is the first proof of stake execution block going to point to that proof of work block, what happens during edge cases, what if the chain reorgs right in the middle of that. So all of that, that's the spec. So this exists. So that's what these testnets have been running. That's what Kintsugi has been running. So full merge specification, test networks in progress, fork choice improvements. So basically, there just have been a few bugs that have been discovered in the fork choice rule. This is the function that nodes use to determine like which block is the head block if there are multiple competing blocks based on all of the votes that all the different validators have made. And this is just like adding some armor to make it more robust against certain kinds of attacks. So once that's done, then the merge can happen, right? And once the merge happens, then no more proof of work, right? And so then that's the merge. After the merge, we have the post-merge hard fork. The most important feature of the post-merge hard fork is just enabling withdrawals, right? So the merge itself, just to keep it simple, does not enable withdrawals. But the post-merge hard fork, which there is a spec for enabling withdrawals, but this is something that will actually needs to be done a little bit later.
Just to be clear, Vitalik, this is about withdrawals for beacon chain ether depositors and validators. So
Correct.
this
So
isn't
if
about
you
tokens or anything else, right?
Exactly. So if you threw your 32 ETH in and you're a validator, then once the post-merge hard fork happens, you will be able to withdraw the ETH and the rewards and bring it back into the execution layer.
Will everyone be able to withdraw all at once, or how is that?
There is a queue. So if lots of people start withdrawing, then lots of withdrawals will have to wait.
And so to be clear, Vitalik, those are happening in two different hard forks, right? Two different stages here.
Mm-hmm.
And any idea on how far they will be apart? Will these be like months apart, weeks apart?
Realistically, like maybe 6 months.
Okay, 6 months apart. Okay, so that's the merge, and that means proof of work is gone effectively. We just have proof of stake. What does this mean for the typical user or the typical DeFi application? Will they have to do anything? Do they have to click a button in MetaMask that says like upgrade to merged ETH?
I mean, they'll have to upgrade to merged MetaMask, but they will not have to upgrade their ETH or their applications. So from the point of view of applications, like it's just like any of the hard forks that we've already been through.
So effectively nothing. Effectively, users don't have to do anything at all. Okay, so that's the merge. Let's talk about next. And by the way, with the merge, we haven't mentioned, of course, all the proof of work issuance goes away as well, right? So that's something over 4% or so, and that is now gone. No more proof of work issuance. No more miners on Ethereum for the first time. That's going to be an interesting state to be in. That all happens at the time of the first merge. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about the second, which is